Okay, we're going to start with our norms. We agree to meet every day during planning time. We'll start at 12:55 and end at 1:35. We have our golden apple in the center to encourage our discussion being on task. We agree to mutually agree upon decisions that impact the success of our students. We encourage participation by frequently checking in with all members, and to ensure that we meet our grade level standards, all team members will bring materials and be ready for learning. Okay, so let's look at question number 1. What do we want students to know and learn? And so next week we have a new standard for language arts. And that standard is 1.8C. And that standard says, describe plot elements including main events, the problem and resolution for text read aloud and independently. So this standard includes a lot of things. And I think this is the first standard we've had that actually differentiates and explicitly says read aloud and independently. So we can give the students lots of opportunities to practice this skill during like whole group lessons or something like that for read alouds or in guided reading and even independently. And knowing that next week is COGAT, we need to keep in mind 4 days instead of our normal 5 because we're taking one from each subject, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's keep that in mind when we're planning. Okay, so knowing what we want them to learn, the plot elements, let's look at the lesson plan and kind of dive in and then see if that's the process we want to go through or if we want to pull some other resources. So you guys want to start looking at that really quickly? Let me pull this up.
The lesson plan has whatever we use for the beginning, middle, and end. When we have this week's retelling, the same poster that we have.
But we technically haven't introduced that yet, right?
No.
Okay.
But then we're supposed to focus on the plot only for this text, right?
So maybe we may want to look for something for plot.
So the TEKS guide says, ask students in a whole group or small group setting to verbally identify and explain the main events, the problem and solution, and the progression of the plot in chronological order. And then a teacher can use a retelling rubric to assist with this assessment. So they break it down into the students doing this in 3 steps. They ask the main idea of a story and name supporting details. And then they ask students to retell the plot and then to discuss the problem and solution. That's one suggestion.
So have we touched the main idea already? Would that
No.
be a new thing
No,
to
not
introduce
really.
with the plot together?
So we haven't explicitly taught that yet.
So I was thinking, because this week we were using do you still have your?
It's back there.
We were using somebody wanted something but so then. We can stay with that thing and then just focus on the problem and resolution part
Because
for the plot.
that was this week, right? So problem and
Yeah.
resolution. We said we were going to connect it to that.
Yeah.
One of the things it says on this anchor chart that HMH is suggesting in the lesson plan is the beginning includes the characters face a problem, and then the middle is made up of events that happen as the characters try to solve the problem, and then the end tells the resolution. So those are kind of like all the things that we had in our other retelling strategies.
Right.
Somebody wanted, but so then. So if we want them to have the language knowing that like 2nd grade teaches beginning, middle, end, 3rd grade teaches these things so that they see it in different ways, could we connect those elements, like the somebody wanted but in the
To the
beginning.
beginning, middle,
Because
and
it sounds like
okay.
that's what it's showing. In the beginning, the characters face a problem.
Right.
So they want something, but they have a problem. And then the middle are the events that happen as they try to solve the problem, and that's what we
And some of the
said.
difficulties.
That's what we said that so is, right?
Yeah.
Those are the events in the story that the character
Trying to resolve the problem.
does to resolve the problem. And then the end says, the end tells the resolution or how the characters solve the problem. So that kind of
Yeah.
wraps up the story.
So that means we're using this chart and then connect it with whatever they know already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So how do we want that to look then? And how are we going to, how will we know if students have learned? So I like the idea of showing them in another way, like looking at it in beginning, middle, end, so they have
Yeah.
that language that they'll see in other grade levels, but also connecting it to the retelling we've already done. So what do you,
What if we use the beginning, middle, end paper that we have
okay, in the
and-
lesson plan?
in the lesson
Okay.
plan, and then we will explain it, the SWBST, we somewhat wanted, but so then tie it in together so they understand. Because they know that,
Mm-hmm.
because we've been practicing that. And then just tie it in, what is the beginning, what is the middle, and what is the end, and use that as like a rubric for us to test their
Like as an
understanding.
organizer or something? Yeah, we'd have to either
Even create one.
create it or somehow on that organizer on the lesson plan
Just add it to it.
add it, like write it in maybe.
We can do
But then
that.
what would, if we were to do it, to teach it whole group, what do we want our anchor chart to look like too?
We
Like,
could still
because that's a
use
lot
something-
to put together.
We
so
can
what do we
use
want it to
still
look like?
We can use the roller coaster.
the roller coaster, still use that.
Right, but if we're practicing the skill and we're doing the whole group,
Yeah.
how are we gonna model doing that and record it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like if we have our whole group organizer, like graphic organizers, and then we want the kids
expectation that they have to
to
actually
look.
Do they have to write it? Do they have to?
It says
think they
describe.
have
Let's
to
see what the lesson
describe it.
says.
Describe
Describe.
independently though. For text read aloud.
It
and
doesn't-
Independently.
Yeah, it doesn't say with teacher assistance.
Yeah, it just
so
says
it could
read
be
aloud
read
and
alouds and it can be
independently.
It
independent.
can be
It says describe plot
describe
elements.
plot element,
including-
including main events, the problem, and the resolution. So 3 things.
Yeah.
So they don't have to have them all like.
Well,
So
they,
how are
they
we gonna-
practiced everything last week.
Mm-hmm.
The character and they wanted but so then. And this week we're taking out the problem and resolution out. And next week we're focusing on the plot.
Which is all those things back together.
Yeah, which is all
Right.
them back
Mhm.
together. Just seeing,
Yeah.
and the graphic organizer here, the anchor chart, is putting all those things that we showed in a different way, just in beginning, middle, end.
And you
So
can
that in a
even-
story structure, these things are usually in the beginning. These are the things that usually you see in the middle.
And you could even have one for some story that you're choosing, have it written out on little cards and then put them on that roller coaster even.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if
a
you're gonna do
visual.
chrysanthemum.
And you know
you
what?
could have the
Make a
somebody
roller
and
coaster.
the, you know, at the beginning and then the,
Somebody wanted, but
but then,
And
I don't
then-
remember what
and
those
then
labels
so,
are on the.
and
I
then
think
then
last night I saw an anchor chart that just had just the roller coaster, and maybe we can use that, and then just add what you said with the,
Yeah, if you're just trying to connect the two.
and we can use that over and over again.
I know
You get-
third grade has the roller coaster for plot.
they're
Mhm.
I
using
think
it from
fourth grade does
HMH.
too. I think they put it in all of them.
There is a reading strategy
Uh-oh. For younger
about
ones.
the
There you go.
Yeah, there's
Right
that
there.
one. What page
that one
is
is
that?
about the plot.
Yeah.
137. And it has the roller coaster. It doesn't have beginning, middle, and end in there. But it has like it has beginning and then rising action. The character work on solving the problem and then the climax will be the highest point.
You could even,
There
like,
is-
ask the kids
I like that.
ahead of time to see how logical it is. Like, if you just talk to them about some book they've read and say, what was the beginning? What of this was the beginning? What was the middle? What was
Right.
the end? If they all all kind of get it, I don't see spending that much time just labeling beginning, middle, end.
Mm-hmm,
Because they've already done it.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
that's-
So, I mean, see how logical they are about it? I mean, I think they can probably do it if they can do that. Like, I don't see spending
But
a
I,
whole
week.
week just on
Yes.
labeling beginning, middle,
Mhm.
end.
Mm-hmm.
I like the roller coaster, and then we connect whatever we have already and put it on the roller coaster.
So they
have
can
the
make that
visual
connection.
of where the story is.
Mm-hmm.
So then if we don't think we need all 4 days, how do we want to plan out our week?
Well,
So
with
that we can
COGAT,
ensure that we're
that's gonna
teaching it
take
and that
up
they're
some
having
time.
opportunities to practice and demonstrate that they understand.
Yes. So we can.
One of the things on that page right before it, if we wanted them as a way to show that they know, there's just a little beginning, middle, end foldable
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that we could maybe put beginning and then in parentheses maybe put the somebody wanted but, so they make sure they have all of those things, and then in the middle have the so that
So.
they're tying it back together.
Oh, we could do that.
I just think that for like our beginning readers, this is gonna be a little bit
And
too
I did see
much.
this from the,
HMA.
yeah, HMA. So
What do
that,
you want the end outcome to be? So for question 2 is how will we
Yeah.
know if they are able to do that? So what would that look like? And then
They
how do we want to
should-
get there?
I mean,
Yeah,
they
they-
should be able to describe the plot, but I feel like we've already kind of done that.
Mhm.
But do we want them to, are we wanting them to demonstrate it in a different way, or do they already have it? That's
I
the
was
question.
thinking.
but you see, in the plot, they have to include the main ideas, they have to include the problem and the resolution. So you see, they have to include all of that. So we have to make sure that even when kids, they retell, they think they're retelling the story, but they're leaving a lot of the details out.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we have to make sure that they're gonna hit. What is the main events? What's happening in that story?
I think the main, well, we have the problem and resolution. We did not touch the main event in there this week.
Mhm, yeah.
So the plot has what they're trying to do to solve the problem.
Okay, and that's, if we were to tie it back to our other strategy, that would be the
Right.
so. But how specific do we want them to say? Just like a general overview of what they did, or every single? I mean, when you're describing the plot and the events,
I would think
how
just
are we
a
gonna
general.
how are we gonna teach
general.
them?
I think
Like-
general.
How
Yeah.
specific do we want to be about the events? I mean, obviously the important events in the story.
That lead to solving the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
They have to make that connection. How's that gonna help it?
I like the beginning, middle, end foldable.
Mm-hmm. I do too. I
think
like that.
that's first grade level,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're gonna label it with the words they already know.
Right. And those kids that do have problems with writing, they could draw the pictures
So,
so we can
We
see.
could scaffold for
Yes.
students who.
Mhm. That would help.
so for the question number 2 that we are doing the formative assessment, can we use the one that we did for the somebody wanted something but so? Because that's all the elements that we
Yeah,
have in
we
there.
could.
Then we have a pre-assessment already and see where are they
Oh,
right
to
now.
use that one as our pre-assessment?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay,
To use
yeah.
that.
That would work.
So then we have something to compare with.
Mm-hmm.
That after 3 weeks, that's the 3rd week, and
Mhm.
do they get it or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we don't have to create another rubrics for it.
Oh, you're saying use the rubric
Yeah.
from
so
that. Yeah, we
from
could use
the-
Yeah,
that
to
to
just maybe
score.
add on to
But
it.
do we want them to demonstrate using the foldable?
Um,
Or it could be practice.
that can be like working independently,
Mhm.
right?
But also too, those children that have a difficult time getting their words on paper, this would be a big help. Because I have a few, they're writing a sentence, but it's very difficult to understand what that sentence actually is. So if they draw a little quick picture with it, that would help.
Mm-hmm. So are we in agreement that we want to use the foldable as their way of
To demonstrate
their
understanding.
understanding?
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe, do we want it labeled like this, like in the beginning, in the middle, and the end? Or do we want to specifically put
I
don't
think
know
we
if
should
it-
too,
if
we
it-
still put the
if it
beginning,
matters
middle,
that
end,
much.
and then include that too, so they can tie it together.
Okay.
What do you think?
Okay, so then using that other rubric that we've already done as a pre-assessment to guide us this week, how do we want to use that? I'm just looking at that chart. Because if we're going to use it, some of my students really had some struggles identifying problem and solution, which we're coming back to this week, which is good.
Yeah.
But then showing it in another way doesn't mean it's going to transfer from that strategy to beginning, middle, end. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's in a different, we're tying it together, but
Well, then that goes back to question number 3.
3 and 4.
Yeah. So if they still didn't know, then we go back to
We have to go back.
this week's problem and resolution. And
'Cause that's the-
enforce that. That's the right. And we scaffolding them to describe the event, the main event that helped the character to resolve the problem.
I think the children are better to orally express it than sometimes to write it and put it on paper. So that would help us definitely if we had to go back to number 3.
Right, some of my students can only demonstrate it orally because they get so bogged down by the
That's right. And
the
written,
how
even
do-
the drawing.
How do you spell this word? You know, because they want to make it right, but that's not what we're really looking for. We're just looking for how are they going to respond?
Okay, so can I go back to number 2 really fast? How will we know if students have learned? I just want to make sure we're in agreement. Students will be able to describe the plot elements using a beginning, middle, and foldable, but the standard is text read independently and read aloud. So how do we want them to demonstrate that? From a read aloud that everyone has access to?
Is there one in the plan?
Or there's some HMH read alouds.
I think that would
And there's
probably
also
be
that
better.
list of books that
Or
they
list
tried
of
to
books.
tie to the standards that we've kind of been pulling from also.
Well, if they have to do it independently, it should probably be from the HMH part.
You
But
do
it
the
would
same
still
thing.
be read aloud, wouldn't it? It would still need to be a read aloud, even if it's HMH. Because my lowest readers aren't necessarily going to be able to access that and read it.
Would you be able to read it to just them and let other kids read it on their own?
Yeah.
There's audio,
Mhm.
We
there's
could
audio
scaffold.
books,
Yeah.
But, yeah.
like the read aloud books on.
I guess just with
HMH.
no discussion is what the point is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If it's independently read, then you just reading it is the same as them just reading it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't want discussion with it to help them.
Right, right.
Right.
Like, that's the point of independently
Mhm.
read.
But do we want it to be like their independent level? Like if I have a student who's reading independently at a J, is going to have a very different story than a student reading on a C. So do I want them demonstrating it at their independent level or at a read
I think
aloud that everyone
I
has?
think as long as it has the elements in there, I think you could probably put most of your kids on the same thing, like if you wanna use the HMH story, and then just scaffold for the ones, maybe just pull that group who needs it read aloud.
So you think, okay,
I mean, I don't know, I haven't looked at the story,
So the
but I'm just saying,
story-
like I say make that part as easy for yourself as you can, put as many of them on the same story,
So it
because
may be a read aloud.
Yeah.
the skill,
Yeah.
the skill is that they're doing it independently though, that you're not discussing it.
Mm-hmm.
I did one of the HMH story for problem and resolution today. So I just play it on
Mm-hmm.
the board.
Yeah.
and this one says it's called Hooray for Holidays. It's a realistic fiction story. So the teacher reads aloud the text Hooray for Holidays. Guide children to read the story all the way through. Pause occasionally using prompts in your teaching pal to gauge children's understanding and have them describe literary elements, characters, setting, events, problem, and resolution. And then after reading the story, think aloud. Our character in Hooray for Holidays had a problem. How do readers use events? Da-da-da-da-da. Let's fill out this graphic organizer.
So that's the guided one.
That's the guided.
Yeah.
And then the independent work time is a story called Arbor Day. The teacher can read the story aloud, or students can listen to the story by accessing the HMH site.
Yeah,
And there's-
and this is the graphic organizer that they're suggesting to use.
But I think we said we were gonna use the
I know,
foldable
I know.
instead, yeah.
Mhm, yeah.
And that's the second guided story. The first story is the pig one. At the beginning, there's another one introducing the story structure.
Oh, it's a video, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a video of the story.
Yeah.
But then we talk about the problem in there too.
Mhm.
So that would be
The I do.
first. I
Yeah.
do, yeah.
Mhm.
And then the hooray for holiday, maybe,
Could be the we do, and then the independent could be them doing it.
yeah.
That's the mini lesson.
On the prepare to read Arbor Day, it says make a prediction, you know that stories have a problem that gets solved, what do you think the problem is in Arbor Day?
I mean, most of our kids aren't even gonna know what Arbor Day is to make a prediction before that.
That's
I
true.
mean, there's no I don't even think I know what it is. It's about trees or something, right? Right? Something like that. I mean,
that was just the
You're-
first
you're
Yeah.
close.
I'm just thinking about.
Is that the first unit?
This is the Arbor Day thing that
People
the
go and
plans
plant.
But
reference.
it's
Plant trees.
realistic fiction.
Yeah, it's realistic
So there's
fiction.
gonna be some kid in there, it's probably less about Arbor Day and more about whatever.
Right.
happens to
Yes.
the kid.
The
Right.
neighbors
I'm
wanna
just
plant a
thinking
tree
about,
to
like,
celebrate, they're
that
gonna
question's
plant it in the
probably-
neighborhood in the empty lot.
Yeah,
It's
so
gonna
you
make
just
a
explain it
mess.
to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have
The
I do, we do, and then
do we want
the
to
you do
use
part.
the,
Will the you do part be the foldable that we can assess on?
Mhm.
the
Or they-
independent work
Yeah,
time?
that would be
Mhm.
independent.
Okay.
Can we get that? Does it say which book it's in? I just want to look at the story before we commit to it. Does it say which of those student books that it's in?
Arbor Day?
Oh, HMH,
your-
my book
book.
number 3.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go. Can someone go grab that?
Where is it?
It's out in my cubby. They're the
Oh,
ones that
I
are.
was-
The spine
I
is
was gonna
facing
get
out.
the
'Cause
electronic
all-
one.
Hooray for Holidays is in there, and so is Arbor Day. Okay, so then while we're looking at that, how will we respond? What did we say we were going to do for question 3? How will we respond when students do not learn?
Then we go back to this
back.
week's problem and resolution, and then we
Okay.
scaffolding.
But do we need to just focus on this if all of the plot elements are on that other somebody wanted but so then? Because this is just part of plot, right? Because we
Yeah.
pulled this out from what we did the week before. So do
then
we
we-
need to even go back?
Then we need to figure out which part they're missing though.
Right, I think it depends on.
If they're missing the problem and resolution,
Right,
then
how much that they're providing us the information, I think we'll be
Okay.
able to tell if we need to go back to the SWBST.
this one.
Sorry, I was looking for the story. Okay, so that Hooray for Holidays.
This will tie in with social studies later.
Is about a story of some kids at school who are making holiday cards, and each of the kids are coming up with a card for a holiday, and Dave says, "My card is for Baby Day." There is no Baby Day, said Hope. This is Kayla Casillas. He's at specials. Thanks. Okay, bye. Sorry, that was funny. Okay, there is no Baby Day. So then I guess Dave's problem is that he cannot think of a holiday to write about. We will help you pick a better holiday, Dave. And then throughout the story, I kind of like the way that they've tied the different fiction, like using realistic photos
Pictures.
of real places. And then they're giving him suggestions. And then
Finally pick a
he
different one.
picks a holiday. it celebrates the end of winter, and then he chooses Groundhog's Day. So then that could go through all the events because all the kids help give him different suggestions for. So do we want that to be the guided? What is the other story? Arbor Day.
Arbor Day.
That's a hard one, cause they're gonna get bogged down in who told them what.
So then as a
Oh, no, I'm
we
just
do
saying.
maybe.
I mean, that's up to you, but that is a good skill to know, if the same thing's happening over and over, you can put them all together, like, lots of friends told him, or several friends gave him ideas,
Uh-huh.
or whatever, you know? Cause they're gonna wanna tell so-and-so told
I
him
did
this,
this,
so-and-so
then-
told him this, and then in a list form, when really that's just all the middle.
Right.
Okay, the Arbor Day is very Arbor Day is very short. It's like a
Maybe that
short
would be-
passage. The neighbors want to plant a tree to celebrate Arbor Day. Where can they plant it? There is a big empty lot in the neighborhood, but it is full of gray rocks. There are piles of trash and no grass. The lot is a big dusty mess. We can clean up the lot, the kids say. The kids rake up the rocks. Everyone puts trash in bags. They plant grass and flowers. Now we have to plant the tree, the kids say, and they do. The lot is not empty now. Oh, the lot is not empty now. The neighbors enjoy a picnic by the new tree. Did you know that arbor means tree? Jen calls out. So that's why we planted a tree today, the kids say. Happy Arbor Day.
This can be their
So that's
independent.
actually kind of perfect for independent.
It's just short enough for them to pull out all of the elements that they need
Yes.
without getting bogged down with all the little.
Right. Details.
There's
The
almost
kids said
too
this, and the
many
kids said this, and the
details
kids
in
said
the
this,
other
and the
one.
kids said
So this
So
can be our
our
assessment.
independent practice.
Okay.
They can read that. Well, it's
I would
also
have
on
to be able to
audio
read
too.
aloud.
Yeah, this would have to
okay,
be a read
perfect,
aloud.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's fine if we're reading it aloud to them, but maybe during workshop, like when they're reading to someone, maybe we create some kind of, like, you know how we did with the somebody wanted, but so
With
then
the
bookmark,
Yeah.
and maybe make sure, maybe give them something similar to
They can-
practice retelling with their partner so they have more practice with that
Yes.
skill.
Yes, they definitely
Yeah.
need practice with retail.
So that way we're not, those are the independent level. Since the standard is saying read aloud and independently, that could be the opportunity they have to do it independently.
Okay.
For beginning, middle, end.
Yeah, for the
Yes.
plot elements. Okay, so we're gonna put 1 day for COGAT.
15.
So then, how will we respond? What did we say? How will we respond when students do not learn? Did we agree what we were gonna do?
We'd go
I
back.
thought
Saying
You
going
said
back.
it was
Yeah.
based on
To-
what
Okay.
the students
Okay,
missed.
so
Based on what
Right.
student
And we go
missed,
back.
then
yeah, foldable. Find. I mean commonalities or find plot elements frequently missed by students. And reteach. Do we want to reteach that in a strategy group? Do we want to reteach that and touch that in guided reading? What do we want to do? Because it really depends on the level of text and guided reading too, right? Some
Yes.
books have
but even my
more plot elements. Like an A is not going to have a
B-
plot element.
even my B group has a problem.
You're
I know
right.
with B level, it has a problem in there.
Depending on the
easy.
book, right? Unless if
Yeah.
it's not a pattern book.
Well, the B book is pattern book. Like I can jump up, says the kangaroo, and rabbit says I can jump up, and then it comes to bat. He said I cannot jump up. That's the
Okay.
problem. But he can fly. So even the easiest one, they still have problems.
Okay.
That's what you're saying, yeah.
Okay, so then
So we can
reteach.
find something.
So look at to respond when students do not learn. Look at the beginning, middle, and foldable. Find plot elements frequently missed by students and reteach
Yeah.
in guided reading
Yeah, and
Yeah.
guided reading.
That would
With their-
cover it.
using instructional level text with teacher support.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be easier to go back and reteach it in their guided
Yes,
reading groups
it
than
would be.
finding extra time. Okay, how will we enrich and extend the learning for students who are proficient?
That means they know how to describe the plot element.
Tell us what to do, Joan. Just kidding.
Maybe
That's not the
to,
lesson I thought you were on.
maybe to write it. Once they could orally tell us, maybe they can write it.
Well,
But our
and some,
assessment is writing already.
in first grade, they're not quite sophisticated enough to need that much, like, they still need all this. Even if they're an advanced reader, they don't have the labels to put with
Sure.
all those elements. So that sheet you held up with the, like, sometimes that's enough differentiation to offer them the sheet. Do you wanna do it on this foldable, or do you wanna do it on here? To make them, you know, it's,
It's still
in
kind of
this case,
picture
they
with the
still have to
beginning
do,
and
I
end.
think in first grade.
So the choice of a product to
I think
demonstrate.
the choice of product is a fine differentiation, just, you know, for this case.
Yeah.
Because,
It's
you know,
graphical
even if
research
they're a
on
high
four.
reader, they don't have the vocabulary of beginning, middle, end, attaching it to the somebody wanted but so then, they don't have all that, even if they're a high reader.
Yeah, and this does say beginning, problem, middle, events, ending, resolution,
yeah,
so it
there you
does tie some of,
So it does.
more of the sophisticated literary language. Okay, so offer students the choice of a product, the BME foldable or HMH graphic organizer
Cause
to.
I don't think you're gonna have anybody who can just do all this automatically,
No,
where they
I
would
don't
need a
think so.
different
No.
learning activity.
Okay, and then we said we were gonna use that rubric we had created for the somebody wanted, but so then, and then we might just need to put in parentheses like beginning, middle, end to tie it to it. So we'll link that. Okay, so if we have 4 days now that we have all of that planned out, how do we want to organize our lessons for the week? Watch Ormy the Pig video. So the first little mini lesson chunk, it says to watch a video called Ormy the Pig.
And that's only 4 minutes, so it's pretty short.
Let's, then you're having a discussion about the problem. Let's add this problem to our story structure poster under beginning. That comes back to the little roller coaster one.
So that's the,
Write the problem on a sticky note. What events happen in the middle? So this could be the teacher demonstration piece, right?
yeah,
You're modeling and you're thinking aloud.
and that's an introducing of the whole, the roller coaster poster?
Yeah.
Okay. That can be day one.
And we're gonna have to keep these lessons. I mean, they're mini lessons, but because of COGAT, depending on how much time,
Yeah.
you know. Trying to get in all the other stuff too. Okay, so.
The other thing for enrichment would be when you have those kids at table, when you're not talking to the whole group, asking questions like, well, what if these events had not happened? You know, removing something from the plot to reiterate how important, you know, that's why the author put that in here, because you need to know that all the other animals could jump. That's why it's extra sad that the bat can't, you know, or whatever.
That would be good.
So what would happen in the story if the author did it?
Left out
Left out.
various
Yeah, change
plot
it,
elements.
Or change the,
Change or
events.
left out. And just tying it to the author put that, cause that's what they need to understand is the author includes all that for reasons.
And it's interesting because remember when we looked at all the guided reading, or not guided reading, the running record assessments? And a lot of those author's purpose types of questions are the ones that are higher readers that you would assume that they understand that. Those are the questions that they consistently did not answer correctly.
that's true.
So why did the author, a lot of mine were nonfiction, but why did the author put this text feature in? What is the author trying to teach you with that? So then thinking about it in another way, what would happen? Why did the author put that detail in?
Yeah,
That would be a good way to touch that. Okay.
that's a good question.
So I put both there under PLs, the number 4. Why did the author? Okay. So do we want it? So we want to use Ormy the Pig?
Yeah, I think that's
think
an
so.
introduction piece.
It's a cute story.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. We'll make this look pretty in just a minute. So Ormy the Pig.
Okay, so then we use that to discuss and introduce the story structure.
And I'm just gonna put tie back to somebody wanted, but so then.
Yeah, and do you want their independent practice be due to somebody and maybe review the problem and the solution?
Or do we want them to do somebody wanted but so then?
The whole thing,
Because
yeah.
that's the
Oh,
whole
'cause-
plot
and we
element.
have the bookmark already,
Okay,
yeah.
So
they can review
then- in their, oh, there's our stopping point, so we'll stop and then,
that. We'll print out the dates.
we can finish this after.
Okay.
Okay,
But I think we have a good skeleton idea of how we're gonna go in order.
yeah, and I think the
Yeah.
rest of it will be much easier.
Cause now we're just tying all the things that we've already done, like, back together in another way.
Do you want to put this page number first in